College football playoff rankings came out last night. We've got a Wednesday afternoon college NFL game, the Ravens on the road against the Steelers to finally complete the week in the NFL. What did we learn from the college football playoff rankings? Not much. The big story remains whether or not Ohio State is going to be able to finish their season, and if they do, whether they will be in the college football playoff. Big news also that the ACC seems to be paving the road for both Notre Dame and Clemson to make the college football playoff as a result of wiping out games on December 12th. There will be no Florida State-Clemson makeup, and there will be no Notre Dame traveling to Wake Forest. Instead, both of those teams, presuming that they win this weekend, we've got Virginia Tech hosting Clemson, and Notre Dame is taking on Syracuse. Presuming both those teams win, then they would have a bye week, and then they would roll into the ACC title game on December 19th with a good chance of both Notre Dame and Clemson getting into the college football playoff. If Clemson were to come back with Trevor Lawrence this time and beat Notre Dame, that will be an intriguing game to be watched for sure. Will the SEC follow that lead and try to protect its college football playoff contenders and give them a bye week? Wouldn't stun me at all. This weekend, Florida is on the road against Tennessee. If they win in Knoxville, the Gators would clinch the SEC East. Alabama is on the road in Baton Rouge. If the Tide win that game, they would clinch the SEC West. Would there then be any point at all in having Alabama play against Arkansas, a game they would be a big favorite in? And would there be any point in Florida playing LSU, a game they would be a big favor in? I think there's a very good chance that the SEC would follow the ACC's lead, and once they had their conference championship game set, once Florida had won the East and once Alabama had won the West officially, they would go ahead and cancel those games on December 12th. I think that is very likely to happen. Why does that matter in the college football playoff picture? Because potentially that means that if Florida upset Alabama and if Clemson beat Notre Dame, those would be your four college football playoff teams. You'd have two from the SEC, two from the ACC, and it wouldn't matter at all what happens in the Big Ten with Ohio State or whether Texas A&M is able to finish 9-1 or even how Cincinnati's season comes to a close. That is where we are headed in the college football universe as we get ready for December action in the first Saturday of the month. Usually, by the way, this would be when college football is pretty much over. This would be when the conference championship games are happening. We would go ahead and set the college football playoff shortly thereafter. Instead, we're bumping all the way back to December 19th, so they've already added a couple of weeks to the college football schedule. Ohio State, by the way, back at practice. But last night, a little bit of fireworks. Kirk Herbstreit said he wouldn't be surprised if Michigan elected not to play against Ohio State. If that were to happen, that game, of course, scheduled for next Saturday. If that were to happen, then Ohio State wouldn't be eligible to play in the Big Ten title game, which is its own mess. We've got the game going on today at 3:40 Eastern. I think you said, Eddie Garcia, only the second time since the 1940s that we have had a Wednesday football game in the NFL, and the Ravens have landed in Pittsburgh, and that game is scheduled to go on. How would you break it down, Eddie Garcia? You are our resident Pittsburgh Steeler fan on the show.
Well, as you well know, Clay, it's always a spirited game regardless of the records between the two teams. I think Pittsburgh has been irritated quite a bit. Not that it's necessarily the Ravens' fault by this game being delayed 3 times, plus the fact that it's a rivalry game. I definitely think the Steelers will be ready to play and should take care of business against Robert Griffin III and a depleted Ravens team.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Steelers, probably of anybody in the NFL, have had the most impact from COVID without having major COVID issues within their own team, right? If you go back to the Titans issue and the way that game got rescheduled, they lost their bye week as a result of that. And by lost, I mean had it a lot earlier in the season than they were anticipating. And now with the situation breaking out with the Ravens, remember, this was a game that was supposed to be played 6 days ago. It was supposed to be the primetime game on Thanksgiving night. Instead, it ends up happening on a Wednesday. And now what? The Steelers, you'll know this better than me. I haven't kept up with all the days. The Steelers are playing on Tuesday now? Next week?
Yeah, against the Redskins.
Is that like it was supposed to be a Monday night game or whatever? I don't even know when the heck that game was supposed to be played. Anyway, so they'll play 6 days from now on Tuesday, so their schedule is off. And then I presume they would play Tuesday and then hope to get back onto a regular schedule for that game on Sunday, right?
Yeah, I think that's also going to be the Sunday night game against Buffalo in 2 weeks,
which is a big game.
Yeah.
For both teams, and obviously the Ravens. It's interesting because if they end up having to cancel any games or postpone any games and add another week, then they're talking about adding an extra playoff team. So in addition to the fact that the Steelers have had to deal with a lot of COVID issues from their opponents, they also could end up losing their bye week in the playoffs because of other issues that could arise with the NFL coming down the stretch run of the season. And with the complexities associated with finishing this year off. By the way, good news, if you're out there, England has announced that they have approved the first COVID vaccine, and they are going to begin to distribute it within days in England. This is the Pfizer vaccine that supposedly, I think I'm correct, December 10th in the United States, it can be officially okayed and then start to be rolled out within a couple of days in the United States. By the way, I don't know why they're waiting till December 10th. It seems to me that it would make sense to go ahead and give it the emergency authorization use. If we believe that it's effective, why are we waiting for, over a week when there are people out there who might be able to take advantage of this vaccine? But regardless, England has okayed it, which would theoretically allow that to start to roll out. One of the challenges that I think American sports leagues will find themselves in is when is it okay for their players to be officially vaccinated for this thing, given the fact that athletes aren't under substantial duress from COVID because of their relative youth and health. But that will be an interesting storyline to follow. Could, for instance, and I'm just throwing this out there, could, for instance, the NFL get the teams that are going to play in the Super Bowl vaccinated before the Super Bowl to ensure that there are no COVID-related issues? Just kind of tossing it out there. It seems like that seems maybe possible. Maybe also for the NCAA tournament, maybe by the time we get to March, some of those college kids can start to be vaccinated, and that could then lead to the end of these COVID positive tests canceling sporting events.
What about you think for fans to get back in there at full capacity, you think that some of these teams are going to require you to get vaccinated? Because I know I have tickets for a concert that was postponed this year. It's moved to 2021, and it's part of Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster requires you to, in order to go back to that concert, you got to take the vaccine.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or test negative before.
I don't know how they're going to know, right? I don't know how a team would know whether the vaccination has occurred or not. But I would think we'll have full football. I would be stunned if we don't have full football stadiums again by September. And I think there's a good chance by the summer that everybody who wants to be vaccinated will have been vaccinated. Now, then you'll have a huge battle over people who want to be vaccinated and don't. And remember, this vaccine has not been cleared for children. And frankly, children really don't need to be vaccinated for COVID because there's almost zero risk to kids from COVID until they have a really safe and healthy vaccine for kids. So far, they've only tested it on people who are 18 and up. So I would think that it'll be a while before any sort of mass vaccination occurs for kids. But yes, there will be a battle over who gets vaccinated first. What about people who don't want to get the shot? I don't think there's any doubt that will be the next front, but at least that will be a return to normalcy in many ways. And it sounds like the focal point is going to be look, over half, if you actually break down the numbers accurately, over half the people who have died with COVID have done so from nursing homes. So people who are elderly are the ones who are at risk by and large from COVID. So when we get these first vaccinations rolling out, they should go straight into nursing homes and just vaccinate the people there for COVID, because then you're wiping out half of the COVID deaths. And remember, these are deaths with COVID. One of the things that I think the media has done a bad job of acknowledging is that many of the people who are dying with COVID are dying with a ton of other comorbidities, right? An average of 3 to 4 other comorbidities. So it's not just COVID. When people say, oh, they died of COVID, oftentimes it's with COVID. And that's certainly true inside of nursing homes. So if you go into nursing homes and you roll out the vaccine there, I think it's 0.6% of the United States population is in nursing homes or assisted living facilities. So you think about the percentage of deaths. We're talking about basically 50%, because New York lied about the way that the nursing home deaths occurred there in terms of the data that they reported, and lied. Maybe it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but they didn't count the deaths from nursing homes the same way other states did. If you ended up in a hospital and you came from a nursing home, you're not counted as a nursing home death in New York. So if you actually counted the deaths accurately, I think it would be over half. But so we're talking about over half of the deaths in the United States coming from 0.6% of the population from people in nursing homes. So again, my math live on the radio is never perfect, but that would mean around 1.5 million, 2 million people are in nursing homes or assisted living facilities. And we should have a rapid amount of that vaccine to be able to go out to the nursing homes. And then you also get people who are doctors and nurses taken care of. And I think that would go a long way towards rapidly ending whatever fear porn is out there. But in the meantime, it won't have erased all of the insanity that we have seen since this began. And I've been on a pulpit here going off on the ridiculousness of Santa Clara County and what they're causing for the San Francisco 49ers and for the Stanford Cardinal. And I'm going to continue to talk about that. And I'm going to make the argument in a way that probably you're not going to hear anywhere else in the world of sports, and why this is significant and why it should matter. But before we do that, I think I'm going to hit a couple of the 5-star reviews out there. We had another massive month in the podcast. Millions of you downloading the podcast every single month. We are, and continue to be, I think I said we were up 300% basically over last year in terms of podcast downloads. And that's because there's this huge, desperate craving for authentic voices in the world of sports, because so many people out there are saying, oh, you know who's a hero? That kicker for Vanderbilt did a crappy kick. Oh, it was the greatest thing they've ever seen. You know, nobody's even pointing out anything about the 49ers moving to Arizona and how absurd it is. Nobody else is talking about Stanford. Nobody else has been honest with you about COVID from the get-go in the world of sports like this show has. And we're being rewarded. And as a result, the overall audience for this show has skyrocketed. And Danny G is reading the reviews. What I would request of you is, if you are subscribed to the podcast, first of all, go subscribe to the podcast. Type in Clay Travis, type in OutKick, go sign up from your phones. We're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we're on the Google, whatever that Google thing is where you can find podcasts. We're everywhere, all right? Go give us 5 stars. Danny G will read your 5-star reviews, and you get a very esteemed 5-star t-shirt. I believe these t-shirts are only available for 5-star podcast reviews. It is an incredibly exclusive and august and esteemed community. And Danny G, you got a couple of them for me here right now.
Yeah, and as you know, I love to start with a 1-star review just to keep you grounded.
Yes.
Before everyone starts kissing your butt on the reviews. And to your credit, it's not easy to find 1-star reviews. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 5 stars. Not that many 1-stars. This one, though, is from his iTunes handle. Marcus is a neckbeard. Clay, 1-star reviews. His title is just simply Clay. Clay Travis is what happens when human feces learn to talk.
That's the whole thing?
That's his whole
That would be a remarkable thing, by the way. If human feces were able to talk and they sounded like me, would people really be impressed about what they sounded like, or would they be impressed that feces now are able to talk? I don't think people would be like, oh my God, feces can talk and they sound just like Clay Travis. I think most people would stop at the feces can talk component of his 1-star review and be like, wow, this really changes things. If you pooped and then your poop talked to you, I don't think people would be like, what voice did the poop talk in? I think it would be that the poop was talking.